So, Dennis Roch, it's really nice to meet you. And so you are a member of the New Mexico House of Representatives, and you are a former chair of the Education Committee.
That's correct.
And it's a pleasure to have a chance to talk to you.
Thank you. Appreciate the invitation.
Okay. So I'm curious about what the what the status and trend is in terms of choice charters and vouchers in New Mexico.
Well, the charter movement in New Mexico is actually quite well established. In fact, there are about 100 charters in New Mexico right now. And about 2/3 of them, those charter schools are authorized by the state, by a board called the Public Education Commission. It's formerly the State School Board, the State Board of Education. Prior to 2003, that's what it was called. And then another 1/3 are authorized by local school districts. So some charters operate within districts authorized by those districts, and some operate in districts authorized by the state.
Okay. And so the 100 are just the state authorized, or that's the total?
100 total. About 2/3 of those 100 are state chartered, and about 1/3 are locally chartered.
Okay. And the ones that are state chartered, are they part of district support systems, or they're sort of operating?
They operate on
the district?
That's correct. They operate on their own. The state charter schools receive direct funding from the state. And they sort of operate like a school district, an LEA. They answer to the PEC, the Public Ed Commission, as their authorizer, and they receive support from the PED in New Mexico, the Public Education Department.
Okay. And most of those are 5-year authorizations? Or?
I believe that's correct. 5-year authorizations and then an opportunity for renewal. Now, one of the things we're working on in New Mexico is a possibility for expedited renewal for high-performing charter schools. And on the other side, the flip side of the coin is maybe expedited closure or revocation for those that are not cutting the mustard.
And so as charters are a growth industry, let's say, in New Mexico, what are some of the challenges that come about as this movement expands?
Well, our charter laws basically waive a lot of the elements of the public school code from charters, so they don't have to follow a lot of the same rules and regulations that a local public school district has to. And so with that comes the opportunity to innovate, but with it also comes the temptation to sort of skirt things that are accountability guidelines, and the guardrails that keep schools from doing wrong. And so occasionally we run into challenges of misuse of funds or not appropriately licensed personnel making key decisions. And so the state and sometimes local authorizers have had to step in and correct charter schools that have not been doing things according to the books.
And what kinds of innovation have you seen with charters?
Well, innovation's been really exciting. There have been some charter schools that have opened specifically around career fields like the media arts or architecture and construction or an aviation theme. And so they're serving as magnet schools for students that are interested in those career fields. Another one that I really want to brag about is something called the Albuquerque Sign Language Academy. And this has designed a curriculum for students that are hard of hearing or their siblings. So the students together with their siblings are learning, for example, American Sign Language and teaching students how to communicate and then to academically succeed. So, for example, most of the time across the nation we see charter schools don't necessarily always have the same levels of students with disabilities. But in this school, the level of students with disabilities is off the charts because it caters directly to a population in need of support and service.
That's really interesting. Are the charters in New Mexico sort of outgrowths of local interest, or are there CMOs, charter management organizations, that are helping to develop some of the charters?
I would say most of the charters in New Mexico are locally created. There's a pocket of families or a number of business folks that get involved in, let's create a charter around this theme, let's create a charter that serves a different kind of need or addresses education from a classical standpoint or from a career-minded standpoint. There are a couple of CMO type generated programs. A lot of them are in the virtual space though. We have K-12 and Connections both that have launched virtual charter schools in New Mexico. It's interesting because our state law is silent on virtual education, and so we're having to play a little catch up in the legislative arena on how do we govern virtual schools and what does that look like compared to a traditional brick and mortar school?
But wouldn't those kids also need to take the state accountability tests?
And they do, and that's one of the challenges, is how do you do that over a geographic area that's the 5th largest state in the United States on geography, and we have very disparate communities, some very urban in Albuquerque and some extremely rural, like the areas I represent in the state legislature.
Is the state test online, or is it paper and pencil?
There is a paper and pencil option, but most of our students in New Mexico take a computer-based test, but it still requires a secure connection and a proctor that adheres to the test administration guidelines.
I say, right. You can't just
you can just log on.
Send to a kid and
That's
say,
right.
Take the test.
Yeah,
right?
not quite exactly how it works.
Interesting. So, as you see this pattern of growth, like a couple of questions. One is, do you see that it's kind of plateaued, or are there more applications? Is it increasing to grow, or has it kind of stabilized?
There are a number of applications every year,
Yeah.
and obviously the authorizers are getting more sophisticated about looking for quality and looking for the kinds of elements that help to predict quality.
Right.
What we don't want to have is just choice exploding for the sake of choice, but we want to have quality choices that ensure that every student has really the means in their school to become successful, whether that's in college or career or both.